evolution of the relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles. So, the heading is, I will say, evolution of the relationship. The present day relationship, how has it evolved? Okay, evolution of the relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles. I mean, over a period of time, how things changed the relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles. That is what I am looking forward in this. See, initially, especially during the Nehruvian time, things were quite crystal clear. Fundamental rights are political rights, directive principles are nothing but the social and economic rights or justice. And if there is a conflict, fundamental rights have an upper hand over the directive principles. So, the directive principles were literally initially, the directive principles of state policy were considered to be subordinate to the fundamental rights. Considered to be subordinate to the fundamental rights. And the Supreme Court struck down many laws passed by the Parliament for implementing directive principles on the ground that they are violating fundamental rights. If a law is passed to implement directive principles and if it is violating the fundamental rights, naturally the Supreme Court even struck down that. Even though Supreme Court has very clearly said that Supreme Court believed and Supreme Court insisted that there is this doctrine of harmonization. Supreme Court strongly believed in the doctrine of harmonization. Because Supreme Court said that both fundamental rights and the directive principle of state policy are equally important. They are the two sides of the same coin. They are equally important. Both are for the well-being of the people. Both are for the well-being of the people. Both are for the welfare of the people. Both are for the well-being of the people. But Supreme Court, so they will try to harmonize as maximum as possible. So, doctrine of harmonization means the Supreme Court will try to harmonize fundamental rights and directive principles as maximum as possible, try to harmonize both directive principles of state policy and fundamental rights as far as possible. But if a conflict is unavoidable, then the fundamental rights will have an upper hand or will be superior to directive principles. If conflict is unavoidable, then fundamental rights are more important. Fundamental rights will have an upper hand over directive principles, and even if a law is passed to implement directive principles, such a law will be declared invalid. So, that is the position taken by the Supreme Court right from the beginning. This is what we call as the doctrine of harmonization. The Supreme Court will try to harmonize both, try to avoid the conflict because both are for the well-being of the people, but if a conflict is unavoidable, fundamental rights will have primacy over directive. Now, let us see the history. So, initially, in the first 2 decades, in 1950s and 60s, there was no major problem, but things started becoming complex by 1969 during Indira Gandhi's time, during the bank nationalization. So, the Indira Gandhi government at that time nationalized some of the big banks. All those banks having a paid up capital more than 50 crore rupees at that time, the bigger ones, they were nationalized, and the reason given by Indira Gandhi at that time was that this is to implement the directive principles of state policy, especially Article 39B and 39C. I have repeatedly talked about Article 39B and C, and please don't forget Article 39B and C. both are socialistic principles. Both are socialistic principles. 39B says the ownership and control of material resources should be well distributed, or should be so distributed as best to subserve the common good. The ownership and the material resources, the ownership and the control of the material resources, should be well distributed, and this should ensure to subserve the common good. So that is 39B. And also the 39C says the operation of the economic system should not result in concentration of wealth in few hands. The operation of the economic system, should not result in concentration of wealth in few hands. Should not result in concentration of wealth in few hands. Concentration of wealth in few hands. 39B and C. So, the argument by the government when the bank nationalization took place was that this is to implement directive principles of state policy of 39B and C. So, bank nationalization took place. So, naturally, the banks, the owners of the bank, naturally they lost their whatever wealth, whatever money they generated, whatever they had. So, naturally they went to the Supreme Court. So, against the bank nationalization under Article 32, these people, I mean these bank, the owners of the bank, they approached the Supreme Court arguing that this bank nationalization is a violation of fundamental rights like Article 14, 19, 31, etc. because 31 was there at that time, right to property was there. Article 19(1)(f), the right to property was there. Article 14, equality before law, all are equal. Whether you are rich, whether you are poor, all are equal. So, they approached the Supreme Court under Article 32 under the writ petition. Supreme Court struck down. Please remember, Supreme Court, considering this, applied the what you call doctrine of harmonization. And since there is a conflict between fundamental rights and directive principle, they chose fundamental rights. And Supreme Court declared that these fundamental rights are essential, and there is a conflict between fundamental rights and directive principles, and this bank nationalization is violating Article 14, 19 and 31. So, Supreme Court declared and struck down the bank nationalization. Saying that it is a violation of Article 14, 19 and 31. So, naturally, back to square one, 1969 bank nationalization, Supreme Court struck it down. So, in 1971, so to overcome the Supreme Court judgment, the next step was in 1971, 25th Amendment Act was passed by the Parliament, just to overcome this judgment of the Supreme Court, which nullified the bank nationalization. And this was immediately after Indira Gandhi came back to power in 1971. At that time, the big slogan was Garibi Hatao slogan was there. She got a massive victory in the Parliament, and based on that, when she had an extra majority, this 25th Amendment Act was passed. And through this 25th Amendment Act, a new article, Article 31C, was introduced. And Article 31C says, if the Parliament enacts a law giving effect to some of the provisions of directive principles of state policy. They did not specify anything. If the parliament enacts a law giving effect to some of the provisions of directive principles of state policy, or if it is implement directive principles of state policy, and in the process if this law, parliament enacting a law, violates Article 14, 19 and 31, and in the process if it violates Article 14, 19 and 31. See, now Supreme Court struck down bank nationalization by saying that it is violating Article 14, 19 and 31, comma, such a law shall not be declared invalid merely on this ground. So, it is very simple, straightforward law merely on this ground. That means, again you please see, I am repeating, if the parliament enacts a law, if the parliament, 31C says, if the parliament enacts a law giving effect to some of the provisions of the directive principle of state policy, and in the process if the law violates Article 14, 19 and 31, such a law shall not be declared invalid merely on this ground. So, once again bank nationalization is valid by through this constitutional amendment, 25th Amendment Act, and Article 31C was added into the Constitution. Now, this 25th Amendment Act was challenged in the Supreme Court, and this was taken up in the Keshwan Bharati case. So, then 1973 Keshwan Bharati case. In this Keshwan Bharati case, it was again a very tough judgment, 13 judges were there. So it was again a 7-6 verdict, a majority judgment, and in that majority judgment, Supreme Court upheld, accepted the 25th Amendment Act and 31C. Supreme Court upheld 25th Amendment Act and Article 31C. That means they declared, Supreme Court declared that this is acceptable and the Article 31C is valid. So, bank nationalization is valid. So, even if it is violating 14, 19 and 31, it is okay. Now, in 1976, in the 42nd Amendment Act, the parliament did not keep quiet. Indira Gandhi government did not keep quiet. It was a partial victory because it was said that, or it's a victory no doubt, because even if it is violating 14, 19 and 31, this law cannot be declared invalid. But in 1976 Amendment Act, 42nd Amendment Act, Parliament once again amended Article 31C and declared that even if violates any of the, or it made changes saying that all the fundamental rights, earlier it was mentioned only 14, 19 and 31. So, that means now even if it is violating any of these fundamental rights, all the fundamental rights or any of the fundamental rights, even if it violates any of the fundamental rights, such a law will not be declared invalid. So, it has expanded the scope. So, you need not worry, in 42nd Amendment Act, Parliament expanded the scope of Article 31C. Parliament expanded the scope of Article 31C. And this was challenged. So, and then later on in 1978, one more change, 44th Amendment Act, and right to property has been removed, right to property, and Article 31 removed as a fundamental right, right to property, and Article 31 removed as a fundamental right. Then this was challenged in the Minerva Mills case 1980. The same cases are same. Even in the basic structure, I talked about Minerva Mills case. The same thing happened. The same judgment only, all these things came up. So, Supreme Court struck down. Supreme Court once again struck down the 42nd Amendment Act related to article, it did not strike down all the 42nd Amendment Act, 42nd Amendment Act related to Article 31C. Supreme Court struck down the 42nd Amendment Act related to Article 31C. That means, if it is struck down, what is left? It is the Keshwan Bharati case judgment. Okay. So, what is valid today? Since then, Supreme Court, the Parliament also did not fight. I mean, Indira Gandhi came back to power in 1980, but she was a changed personality. She did not want to fight anymore. She accepted the verdict and said that yes, earlier I made some mistakes. Now I will not repeat it. Indira Gandhi did not go for a confrontation with the judiciary at that time, and she also accepted, even though she came back to power in 1980. So, what is valid? What is valid is the 25th Amendment Act and the Keshwan Bharati verdict. Okay, what is valid is the 25th Amendment Act and the Keshwan Bharati verdict. Now, but subsequently Supreme Court, see, because in the 31C, please see, I will repeat for you, 31C says that if the Parliament enacts a law giving effect to some of the provisions of directive principle, it did not clearly mention what is that. But Supreme Court in subsequent judgments made it very clear. So, what is practical today, or what is practically available today in Article 31C? So, what is practically implementable today, or what is the present position? The present position, if I say, what is the present position of our relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles? So, Article 31C, its Supreme Court says, or rather Article 31 says that if the Parliament enacts a law, let me repeat it, if the Parliament enacts a law, if the Parliament enacts a law giving effect to some of the directive principles that is originally mentioned, but Supreme Court made it clear that especially for 39B and C, enacts a law implementing Article 39B and C, because not all the directive principles are above these fundamental rights. Now it is saying, if the Parliament enacts a law implementing Article 39B and C, and in the process if it violates Article 14 and 19, because 31 is already removed. So, only 14 and 19, and in the process if it violates Article 14 and 19, comma, such a law shall not be declared invalid merely on this ground. Such a law shall not be declared invalid merely on this ground. So, for the implementation of 39B and C, even if Article 14 and 19 are violated, Supreme Court will accept that law. So, as far as 39B and C are concerned, they are above 14 and 19. That is the present situation. So, in general, fundamental rights are above directive principles. Supreme Court will try to harmonize it, try to find a via media or a middle path. But if a conflict is unavoidable, Supreme Court will give preference to fundamental rights. That is also correct. But according to Article 31C, which is still valid, it is an act which is passed by the Parliament and it is working and it is still there. Article 31C's meaning is, if the Parliament enacts a law for implementing Article 39B and C to prevent concentration of wealth in few hands and for the distribution of wealth, 39B and C, and in the process if it violates Article 14 and 19, even then such a law will not be declared invalid merely on this ground. So 31C is still valid. So this is the relationship between fundamental rights, and only two directive principles can be above two fundamental rights. 39B and C can be above 14 and 19. In all other cases, fundamental rights are above directive principles of state policy. That is the meaning of this. Okay. So this is the relationship. If there is a question on what is discuss the relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles, we have to talk about this. If you are asked to talk about the evolution of the relationship, then you have to talk about bank nationalization, that 25th Amendment Act and Article 31C, Keshwan Bharati judgment, 42nd Amendment Act expanded the scope of the directive principle 31C, Article 31C. Then 44th Amendment Act in 1978 removed right to property from the fundamental rights, Minerva Mills case. And final conclusion, finally what is the position? Article 31C is still valid, and for the implementation of 39B and C, if it violates Article 14 and 19, such a law will not be declared invalid. So that's a very beautiful concept has evolved. After 1980, no change, because Parliament did not go for a confrontation with the judiciary, and that is the position right now. The final verdict as far as this relationship is concerned, it came in the Minerva Mills case in 1980. So that is the relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles.